welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
There we
Evening,
go.
Joe.
Almost forgot that. Hi, how are you?
That's an important part of our prop
Yeah, it
here.
is. It is.
This is how people think we're semi-professional.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yes, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good, actually. I'm had a nice chill weekend and I'm
Good.
reasonably healthy. I am counting what other people might call my blessings.
I think that's a good thing to do, particularly in these fraught times.
Indeed.
Um,
Indeed, I am desperately trying to not succumb to anxiety.
it's difficult. It is difficult, but an old saying has come to mind recently. Um, the pessimists left and lived, the optimists stayed and died.
Yeah.
It's regarding people in Europe in during World War II or before. Um, so
Well, that leads into our topic for this
it
evening.
it does indeed. And since this is something you suggested, why don't you introduce it? But before you do,
Yeah, indeed. Before we begin,
this topic, as so many of ours do, whether light or heavy or in between, requires some kind of fortification. And what do you have this evening?
I have a sort of, I'm not sure if I'm calling it a um, quick and stormy or a dark and dirty,
Okay.
uh, but it's, some Kraken dark rum, little lemon juice, and some ginger beer.
Oh, nice.
So dark and stormy without the special glass.
Yeah. Okay.
And you, sir, what's your?
Uh, I have, this is absolute pear and elderflower vodka, a
Oh,
little bit of lemon juice, and some Fever Tree tonic water.
huh. All right.
And
We should be
it's
getting a sponsorship from Beaver Tree
Yeah,
anytime now.
this is one of my summer, whether it's this or just the pear. Um, it's really light, fresh, refreshing, citrusy, very much a think of as a summer sit on the patio. It's hot kind of drink,
Well,
and it
I mean,
was warm
a pitcher
today.
of vodka tonics can go down pretty good on a hot
Yeah,
day.
oh yeah, yeah.
I
And I
might
like
attempt to
I
try
like
these.
the little bit of flavor in
Yeah.
the Absolute. I've tried some other flavored vodkas, and the flavors are not as good. I don't think of
Mm.
Absolute is not a what I think of as a absolute top shelf kind of vodka, but um, they're
It's an upper middle shelf.
yeah, yeah,
It's not Smirnoff.
great. No, great advertising campaign
Oh,
back in the day.
oh yeah.
Um, but this is a good combination. So
All right.
here's to you.
Oh yeah.
So
Just the right amount of lime. Just
yeah. And it's nice and perky.
I love that.
Yeah, love that. Um,
So, okay, so
we should have a contest sometime to see if somebody can name all the film and literature and obscure references that we just throw in without naming them and just
uh, that is a we go back a long ways. That's I think what we should do is do a live cast where people can tell us they tell us the first person to tell us the reference gets a point, and the
oh, there we
person with the
go.
most points at the end of the episode gets something.
Yeah, that sounds a hearty handshake, a
Yeah,
hearty hand clasp.
right. Or maybe one of our t-shirts that
Oh
we.
yeah, that would be good. So anyway,
Okay, so anyway, I just came upon a reference to a well, I think he refers to himself as a psychohistorian. Um,
yeah, he's a psychologist and a historian. So
right. And his study of history is the psychology of movements and circumstances and governments and
Hmm.
stuff like that. His name is Robert J. Lifton.
Yes.
Um, I saw his name referenced by somebody else in an article, and it has to. And this is just a catalyst for a larger subject. So I don't want to dive down so much into all of his theories and conclusions, or he doesn't really make any conclusions. These are mostly theories that he puts
Right.
forward and um, he calls it doubling
Yes.
is his reference, and it's a and in particular the reference that I saw, and he's written lots of books about horrific incidents and terrifying regimes and things throughout history. But it was a book he wrote called The Nazi Doctors.
Yes.
Um, and this doubling theory that he purports is that these doctors, and he actually interviewed surviving doctors from the concentration camps
Yeah.
during
The
the war.
ones who, though they had sworn an oath to be healers, were actually torturers and killers.
Right. One of them, in fact, was so kind and solicitous to the patients who he didn't kill, I guess. He had he had survivors from the camps um, testify on his behalf at the Nuremberg trials, and he was acquitted.
Interesting. Yeah.
So just one.
Yeah.
They only mention one. Um, but you hear, of course, the horror stories of Auschwitz and Mengele, and all these names have survived to us. Um, but this doubling he refers to is the ability of many of these doctors to create basically a second psychological being entity for them to inhabit while doing their work as a doctor,
Hmm.
and still being able to go home to their families and hug their children and be dutiful husbands and be friends with people in their communities. And to me, this this is basic sort of compartmentalization
Yeah.
we talk about.
Yeah, he wrote doubling is the psychological means by which one invokes the evil potential of the self, that evil is neither inherent in the self nor foreign to it. To live out the doubling and call forth the evil is a moral choice for which one is responsible, whatever the level of consciousness involved.
Right.
I've in looking into this, I've seen other authors put forth the idea that doubling can there can also be a heroic doubling,
Indeed.
that is how people, ordinary people, rise to the occasion to do heroic things that are not normally their the thing they
Right.
do or anything they've been trained for, but they do it and as if they were another person. Um,
And
and
when I read that too, I thought what I immediately thought was that, and as I read, it was borne out a little bit by another critic of Lifton's, was that in fact, in the case of Nazi Germany, there was a concerted effort on the part of the Nazi regime to instill the heroic basis for these evil things. That in fact these people didn't have to compartmentalize their evil deeds. They convinced themselves that the deeds they were doing were in fact good.
yes, that it was heroic because it was contributing to the preservation of the state of their
Well, the race,
fictional
which is the state.
Yes, their race, and um and cleansing the state. And this, of course, brings us to today.
Well, and before we leave, well,
Yes.
also bring us today is that the concerted effort by um, Hitler's Nazi regime started with, you guessed it, children, undermining education.
Yep.
They they drove out professors and university instructors who did not follow the party line.
Yep.
And those they didn't drive out, they intimidated to following and teaching these precepts of racial purity and these horrible things. So that by the time they started doing these uh, internments and experiments, and although the experiments started early, there was still enough, and I read this too, there was still enough resistance amongst what remained of the scientific community that they stopped it.
Mm.
That was experimentation on prisoners and
Hmm.
people, and then later on it just became extermination.
Yes. Well, and they
Um,
resumed some of it too, when
right,
there was nobody to say no. There was no one left to object.
right.
Um, the yes, and that is such a clear, it's not just an analogy for some things that are happening today.
No,
It's the instruction manual. It's
exactly.
the playbook for undermine education, dehumanize people, um, purge the government and other institutions, social institutions, um, of
Yep.
people who disagree.
Well, get rid of actual experts and
Yes,
replace them with loyalists.
yes. And um, it's it it's one of the things that has irritated me, annoyed me, frustrated me, infuriated me is the politicians, the elected leaders who give lip service to some opposition, but are seem to be slow to recognize that this is not politics as usual. It's not circumstances as usual. And there's um I forget the guy who made the adage Poe's law. No, that's a different one. The adage that the first person to compare something to the Nazis loses the argument.
Oh, yeah.
But he came out, and I'll look up what his name is because I've forgotten for the moment. He came out and said, except if it is an actual comparison to the Nazis, then it's
Right.
valid.
Right. Well, yeah, the first person may have lost the argument. By the time you get to the 50th person who's doing it and
Yes.
using the same facts, maybe, along the way they were right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And so I see
Godwin's
the
law.
parallels are
Godwin's law.
Godwin. Okay.
Godwin's law. Yeah.
So
Um, yeah.
the parallels are clear and obvious to you and I think to
Yes.
most people who are looking at this in any kind of rational, objective way.
Yeah.
You can't ignore the miracles or miracles. You can't ignore the
Miracles.
parallels.
Yes. Well,
Um,
the 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 brown shirts, crystal knocked,
the
the
beer hall putsch,
beer hall
the
putsch,
all of it.
the all of it. Um, it's and uh, uh, so I think that rather than creating a in the modern era, let's say, rather than creating a separate psychological persona to inhabit that enables people to do what most people would perceive as evil or immoral or unethical behavior, I think it's actually correct that these people see themselves as doing the moral thing,
Yes.
which is to most people astonishing
Well, it's
that
just,
somebody
well,
would see that.
it's the
And
other side of demonizing the opposition, right?
yes,
Well,
yeah,
they're evil. You have to act against them
yes.
because they're evil.
Well, and
And everything they do then by definition is evil.
yes, and I'm to be clear, there's some of this happening across the board in uh, uh, political philosophical terms.
Oh,
On
yeah.
the far right, far left, there's this entity, this state, this group uh, is falls into the oppressor side of the oppressor oppressed paradigm. Therefore, everything they do is evil, and the oppressed, as I've defined them or identified them, everything they do has to be right and moral, even if what they do is immoral. And it's
Yes.
justified. They will justify it. They'll deny it. They'll justify it. It's that it didn't happen, but if it did happen, it was justified. And if it was justified, then it should happen. And it's this circular
Yeah.
thing. And it's we've talked about it before in terms of cognitive dissonance and selective reasoning. Once you have defined something in a certain way, uh, once a person has defined something a certain way, they will, or taken a certain viewpoint, they will tend to view everything to support
Yeah.
the conclusions they've already reached, and reject information that's contrary to that.
Right. We also talked about in a recent, well, in another episode at any rate, um, the uh, cluster thinking, right?
Yes.
It's a part of that.
Yeah.
Now, there's another aspect of this to get off
And
of
just
the
for people who may not have, for our new listeners, that cluster thinking, that you, the tendency to assume that if someone holds one uh, idea, they must hold a bunch of ideas
right.
that you have associated with them, a cluster of thinking that you've associated with it, and that's not always true.
No, not always, but it is often borne out by someone who wants to belong to a group,
Yes,
generally starts adopting all of their philosophies to solidify their status and their
in
position
the
in
group.
that group.
Yeah,
So they go together, but like we keep saying, look at it for yourself, think for
yeah,
yourself, look at the evidence and decide. Don't just buy it.
and which brings us back to another thing we've talked about before. What is evidence? What is a conclusion versus an opinion? Opinion, matter of taste, something doesn't need
Mhm.
any evidence to support it. You're the world's expert on your own opinions. Um,
Chocolate is the best ice cream.
right.
That's an
Um,
opinion.
but conclusions require evidence. Evidence requires data. It requires critical thinking. Can you analyze it? Can you think about it? Which brings us back to your point about defunding education, dismantling education, stripping institutions, educational institutions of funding and of qualified teachers, giving, allowing tax support for private institutions that of so-called institutions of education that have an agenda or more about indoctrination.
Right.
At the same time, calling critical thinking indoctrination.
Yes.
The projection of what you are, projecting that onto someone else.
Well, assuming
So,
every cheater thinks everyone else is cheating,
yes.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's sort of the
Yeah.
adage. Now, there's another aspect, though, to get away from the more horrific parts of this. I think the heroic thing that you're talking about, or mentioned, the heroic doubling,
Yeah.
where it also allows you to rise up from your normal reactions of fear or trepidation, or that what turns people into heroes. I think there's a case for this is how soldiers are trained.
Yeah.
And this is from a book I read many, many years ago, that I still refer to a lot, is a book called War by a person named Gwynne Dyer. Um,
What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Yo.
Listen to me. So, um, and in this book, they talk about how when you grow up as a child, or as a Western, even as a human being, you're taught that killing someone is the worst thing you can do.
Hmm.
Right? It's the ultimate crime. Taking, as Clint Eastwood said in Unforgiven, you take away everything a man has and everything he's gonna have.
Yeah.
So
That's reference. We should have a put up a number, popular
of
culture
scary
reference number three.
keep track, kids. Um, so, and in this book, War, he talks about how soldiers had to be trained at some point, that or that we once his theory is sort of that when war was face to face,
Yeah.
when you had to be able to look your enemy in the eyes, war was a um, casualties were not as high, say, in the classical period and the Middle Ages that we've both studied. Casualty rates were not as high as they are now. Killing somebody is hard to do. You have
Yeah.
to train to do it.
Yeah.
And
The there was a focus at in the progression of the use of firearms in war. There was a concerted effort to get soldiers to actually aim.
well, and that's where I was going.
Yeah.
That um, so we advanced, I guess. We progressed, if you can use even that word, from the sort of heroic age of combat where you fought and there was a warrior ethos, and we still have a sort of warrior mythology to this day.
Mhm.
The ability to do that, because it was a defensive thing, you were supposed to be defending your home. Um, the person who was able to do that without becoming a horrible monster when there wasn't a war was recognized and admired and rewarded, because that was a very difficult thing to do. Not everybody could do it or wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the courtly love, as instituted in the 12th century by Eleanor of Aquitaine and her followers, as a way to keep uh, the knights who were not in battle from killing each other and everybody else.
well, I think it was more about killing everybody else. Well,
Yeah.
that's a thing, like
Yeah.
technology, and in the classic age, everybody was more or less equal on the
Yeah.
battlefield,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Well,
you had people had the same armaments and the same weapons to a point.
yeah.
There were elite soldiers certainly, but the other side had just as many elite soldiers as you did. And you went out and you were pretty vulnerable. You see pictures of hoplites and legionnaires, and they're not covered in armor.
Yeah.
But we also see right up into the Middle Ages, when you're using conscripted type troops and yeomanry and whatever, when a force inflicted 10% damage, casualties, they'd run away. They just took
That's
off.
the real meaning of, well, decimation was a different, the
Right,
origin of decimation in Rome, but um, yeah, 10% casualties, they'd run away.
right. And that's why maneuver and morale and all those things are important and still
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
But now, but when firearms were introduced to the battlefield, you could take an untrained person and you could give them one of these newfangled firearms, and all they had to do was point it in the general direction of the enemy and pull a trigger.
Yeah.
You didn't have to face the enemy. You could just bombard them from a distance. And right up through the Napoleonic era, soldiers weren't taught to aim, well, because they were smooth bore muskets. You couldn't
Yeah,
really
they, yeah.
aim. Um, so they were taught to be brave, stay in your ranks, listen to your officers. That was it. That was all they were trained to do. I mean, they were
There's
taught how to load and fire, but it was more important to stay in your ranks, because if you could demoralize your enemy by staying in your ranks, they would break and run.
there's another great book called The Face of Battle.
Mm,
That's an account, unlike most histories of warfare, is not told from the point of view of the strategist and the commander, but from the point of view of the foot soldier. And they cover a medieval battle and a Napoleonic era and a World War One, I think, battle. And the Napoleonic one, they talk about their units and staying in rank and file, and a cannonball coming through and just taking out a file.
yep.
Complete
And the other
boom,
files just close in.
gone. Yeah. And you just, and that most of them, that's why they had alcohol rations. So, because,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
And it's
and
not until the American Civil War where rifles,
yeah.
guns that you can actually aim 100
Well, that
yards,
because the barrel is rifled.
rifled.
Yeah.
Right. So before they were smoothbore muskets,
Yeah.
and volley fire was the only way to actually
Yep.
accomplish anything. But now, and like you said, Civil War soldiers had to be taught to aim at an enemy and kill them.
Mhm.
And it's in this book I'm referring to, it literally talks about that. Soldiers were taught to be brave and follow orders, not to kill people.
Yeah.
They didn't want them to think about killing people because they would hesitate.
Yeah.
So that's still a thing. And that's the compartmentalization, and PTSD, I think, is part of that.
Yeah.
You know, the inability to compartmentalize sufficiently is what leads to PTSD.
I
But
think
too
it's,
much compartmentalization is just as bad.
yeah. Well, yes. The, um, it's often been noted that veterans of World War II, like my father, um, didn't talk. They came back to the service. They were citizen soldiers. They came back from the war and they didn't talk about it.
Not
Didn't, I
much.
mean, the only stories my father told me were the funny stories, you know.
Right.
Um, and they didn't talk about it. And I think part of their compartmentalization was we had a duty, we did a thing, and it's over, and now we can go back and set that aside. Um, um,
But
but
now,
that's not necessarily an easy thing for people to do.
no, and it shouldn't be, quite
Yeah,
frankly.
yeah.
And the,
And
the
just a side note, interestingly, the prohibition, thou shalt not, it's often translated, thou shalt not kill.
Mhm.
The precise translation is more closely, thou shalt not murder.
Right.
Killing in war was not considered murder. And so that's, that's something that I don't know. I don't know that that would make much difference to a lot of people, but I just thought it was an interesting thing to note.
Yeah, it's certainly relevant to what we're talking about. And that's kind of, the modern soldier is not, and this again goes back to this book on war, which, by the way, a lot of this is coming from because he follows the life and training of an average soldier from the hoplites, the Greek hoplites,
Mm.
all the way to the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Each chapter is a different sort of era and what their training was like and how they were expected to act on and off the field,
Yeah.
so to speak.
After
So,
Vietnam, it became significantly different because that's the era of that ended the era of conscription and began the era of the all volunteer
right.
armed forces. Um, yep.
But the type of training, I think what happened was the type of warfare that happened in Korea and Vietnam after World War II, right? Immediately following
Mhm.
World War II was Korea, very similar to the type of experience we had in Vietnam. Nobody was trained for that.
Yeah.
That kind of guerrilla warfare, World War I and World War II was guys in uniforms facing across a field to other guys in different uniforms.
Yes.
In Korea and Vietnam was a lot of guerrilla warfare, horrible anecdotal stories of the
Well, and
people saw.
it's certainly now um, the wars that are currently going on are there's an emphasis on what's known as asymmetrical warfare,
Hmm.
where without getting into the specifics of which it could be another topic about we've talked about justified self-defense and the use of force in individual self-defense. We haven't really talked a lot about war, um, and what is a just war and what isn't, and that might be a topic we might talk about. And the reason I say that is I posted something that occurred to me. I posted something a while ago. It occurred to me after reading a lot of comments from a lot of people posted online that the United States is a country that for most of its history has been almost three, oh my God, 250 years, um, has been at war or involved in some sort of war or some sort of military conflict.
Hmm. But
And
only
for,
once, on our own soil.
yes, but for a country whose people have, for a country who's been so involved in military affairs, warfare, armed conflicts, the people of the United States know jack shit about war. They don't
Right, because it
understand it.
hasn't been home. It hasn't been at
No, they
home.
don't understand it. They don't understand how it's done, why it's done, what goes on in it. They think it's, I don't know, they think it's like John Wayne movies or Rambo or some other bullshit. Um, they don't understand. Now, I have not served in the military, although my father and my uncles and my great uncle did. Um, but I can read books like you're talking about, like I mentioned, and scholarly papers, analysis, documentary evidence of
Hmm.
wars, talking to people. It's possible to know what it is and why it's done. And I think citizens of a country like the United States that's been this involved in military conflicts and spends so much money on the military, ha citizens have a duty to understand something
Yeah,
more than they currently do
right.
about the military and about war because so many people know so little about it.
Well, I
Um,
have to, and it's a exercise in control of not rolling my eyes when someone talks about soldiers defending our freedom over some desert country. They're there defending our freedom. They're not.
yeah,
That's not really what they're doing over there. I mean, I without disrespecting the military in that you put on a uniform and you take an oath and you stick to it and you display honor and courage and all those
hmm
things. Uh, Admirable,
yeah,
admirable.
yeah,
I'm not dissing the military. I'm saying that the people who are telling you why you have to respect the military are lying to you.
yeah. Um, I think also it brings us back to the original question, the original topic we started with. Um, the the training, I'll segue back into it because you talked about military training. Part of their training is to recognize what a legitimate lawful order is.
It's pretty
It's
ephemeral training in
yes,
that,
it's
especially in
and
in the heat of
yes,
guns are going off, smoke is in the air,
yes.
people
But
are being hurt.
what
Trying
is
to
a
decide
right?
what side you're on.
Well, what is a lawful order? Now we've seen lots of movies where that's the crux of the story. But it's if how do the first because of training, maybe inclination, the first response is sir, yes, sir, and you obey the order and you follow through. At what point do you question, and this is beyond I have no personal knowledge of this, but I think it's a relevant question. At what point does the individual question whether the order they've been given is lawful? And why is that responsibility placed on the individual? But isn't that always
Well, it has to
up
be.
to
Yeah.
each individual to say no or yes? Yes, I will do this and suffer the consequences of doing something that I shouldn't, or no, I will not do this and suffer the consequences of not doing it. And I think the the deployment of troops on American soil in violation, I think, clear violation of posse comitatus, which forbids the deployment of military on American soil, U.S. military on American soil, um, I think is being violated. That'll certainly be taken up in the courts. I hope.
Not before it might be too late.
Yes. Um, but at what point does, and we've seen this in other countries, when the military says, no, we will not do this, and they side with the people instead of with the authoritarian government.
Well, and I think that this is kind of why we have a National Guard. The National Guard are the people who live in the state or in the surrounding environs of where they are deployed when they are deployed. In the California National Guard is who was originally federalized and brought to California.
Yeah.
These are California citizens looking at California citizens across the street.
Hmm.
The real danger is the Marines.
Yeah.
And I just heard an interview, a little snippet of an interview with a two-star general who is in charge of their training, retraining them from, in his own words, from being war fighters to being urban support to law enforcement. That they don't do that. That's not what they do. So they're having to spend some time training before they are turned loose on an American street.
Right.
That's scared the shit out of me, quite frankly.
Well, and when you look at the militarization of police forces across the country,
Yeah, who don't even get that kind of training.
no, they don't. And you look at um, ICE, who is they're because they are the armed, tactically armed, dressed uh, ICE officers, presumably, who are masked and not showing identification and
Many of them aren't even wearing uniforms.
not wearing uniform and taking people off the street that not showing a warrant. um, have been examples now of criminals dressing up that way and
Yeah,
going in and invading homes and businesses and
right.
robbing and taking people and taking things.
And
Um,
that is what, see that, and this is what's weird for me is that that's what the Insurrection Act is supposed to be for.
yes,
When
yeah,
when civilians are being attacked by a military or pseudo-military force, that is when you're supposed to deploy the military.
yeah.
And law enforcement has been overwhelmed by a military force or a paramilitary force.
And which is not the case. I
No, they're there to
heard from
support law
I heard
enforcement.
well, but I heard from a good friend who lives in LA who said LA is huge and the protests are in a very small area
Yeah,
and there were peaceful protests until the, until the police started
yeah.
inciting and ICE started inciting and there were peaceful protests, but then um, as so often happens, it's not the protesters, the civilians who are inciting things. It's
Well,
the
you can always count on a couple of assholes,
yes, there
right?
are.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of what the cops do, is they
Yes.
push enough so that the assholes step out of line, and that allows them to draw weapons.
Yes.
Um,
Um,
and I pointed this out to somebody in a response on Facebook, something they said, well, that they weren't, somebody we both know, who's, I'm not going to talk about him now, but um, said that, well, I saw protesters throwing bricks and bottles and stuff, and we need to call out bad actors on our side, or we're hypocrites. And I said, okay. And he said, otherwise, the people who are saying that January 6th was not an insurrection, we're just like them. No, dude, those are not the same thing.
no.
But the sort of the salient, the central line of that was that if if you show up in riot gear and there's no riot, you create a riot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we saw it over and over through the George Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matter things, peaceful, organized protests. More often than not, police show up and they say, okay, or the organizers of a protest say, okay, it's 4 o'clock, protest over, everybody go home.
Yep.
And thousands of people leave, a couple hundred people, maybe 50, depending,
Yeah.
stay and won't leave. So the police are called in
Hmm.
and they are going to forcibly remove these people from public. That's what we see on TV.
Yeah.
We see, a handful of idiots throwing things and chanting names and whatever. The protest is essentially over. They the mass people they've gone home.
Hmm.
Um, but you can always count on some idiot
Yeah. Yeah.
to chuck a half brick, and then it's tear gas and rubber bullets and sandbags or bean bags, I guess. What has bothered me a lot is that a lot of the footage I see, and I pointed out to the same individual I was talking about earlier, that I saw this footage of people throwing things and dropping them off bridges and whatever. And I said, and I've seen footage of police or at least some sort of law enforcement deliberately taking aim at journalists.
Yeah.
I saw them maneuvering so that they can fire behind cover at people who are just cowering away from danger, moving around, flanking them so that they can shoot at them
Yeah.
while they hid.
Funneling people um they funnel them, block them off, and then there's nowhere for them to
Right.
go.
They can't retreat, so they have to fight.
Yeah. I'm I'm um and I'm certainly not the only one to suggest a scenario possibility that given the fact that there are more firearms in this country than there are people,
Uh-huh.
and um, um, although California has one of the states with more stringent um, concealed carry laws, so it's less likely that people on the street are going to be armed. But it's 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 certainly a possibility that ICE or people who are presumed to be because they're not identified, they're in tactical gear, maybe not in, they're certainly not in uniforms, are grabbing people off the street or are going into breaking into homes, don't have a warrant, um, claiming they don't need one, sometimes maybe going in the wrong home, that somebody won't know who they are, may
Hmm.
assume that they are a criminal and will defend themselves, and there will be an exchange of fire
Oh,
between
sure.
civilians and people who are claimed to be duly sworn officers, federal officers, although not identifying themselves. And this could be a precipitating incident for a national declaration of martial law.
Well, like,
Martial law, the United States is big enough and diverse enough that this will be such a thing would be challenging. I think it's more likely to not be everywhere all at once, but a locale, oh, California, LA, start with LA. We're trying to do the right thing, and look, they're resisting, and it's a riot, and they're burning the city down. I have no choice but to send in the Marines
hmm
to save them. I'm going to save them. I'm sending in the Marines. Oh, look, they're resisting. I'll arrest all the politicians who are opposing me, keeping me from protecting the good people. And then they'll move on to another state and another. And pretty soon it's everywhere. Um, um, yeah,
well, and I we can spend a long time on this, but this is all they're lowering the bar for induction into the armed forces now because I think my theory, my conspiracy theory is that they don't have enough troops to cover this country. They need more troops. And they're lowering the bar to entry so that they can have stupider, more gullible people in uniform to do that bidding.
people who are more willing to do it. Well,
Yeah,
you make the economy suffer. People need work.
yep,
Then what do people do when times are bad and they can't get a job? They join the military.
yep.
And you know, it's all the pieces coming together, and um I'm I'm and the people who are in a position to, I don't know if they can do something, they can certainly say something about it and use their voices. They're hand wringing and pearl clutching, and you occasionally you get somebody standing up and speaking with a voice and denouncing it, and once they're taken off the street and their
Hmm.
voices are silenced,
Well, in the end, it's kind of up to us,
yeah, yeah,
right? I mean,
all of
if your
us,
representatives aren't representing you anymore,
yeah, yeah, um,
well, there's there's finally talk now about um, discrepancies in the last election. I'm finally seeing articles talking about people investigating some of the and it's weird because it feels weird because I sound like a 2020 conspiracy
yeah,
theorist,
yeah.
and you know that
Did
although
did that many people really just not show up and vote, or
exactly,
vote for everything but president, which is a reversal of the way it usually is when the
yep,
presidential ballot has more votes than um, down ballot candidates?
right, yeah, that's not just that's not somebody claiming that they saw ballots being stuffed or manufactured. That is huge statistical trends
Yeah,
that don't make sense.
yeah.
Um, will they be allowed to investigate it? Who knows?
Well, and even if they do, that takes a long time.
Well,
And
we've got a year.
do we? Maybe.
Hmm.
We'll see.
Yeah, well, November of 2026. There's a few special elections coming up in states that they never thought they could flip, but they might if they can get a fair election.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and that's the thing too.
but we've wandered off the subject somewhat here.
Yes,
Um,
we started with the idea of how people compartmentalize parts of themselves to do evil things or heroic things, or do evil things thinking they're being heroic. And that led us into so many things that are seem to be going on.
yeah,
Um, I've certainly had conversations with people asking them why they have come to the conclusion they have, and being met with, well, it's just my opinion. I'm
yeah,
entitled to my opinion. Well, yeah, but I don't respect your opinion.
exactly. Right. You're
And
you're entitled to your
because
opinion. You're not entitled to my respect
yeah, and it's an opinion. It's not a conclusion. It's not based on anything except your feelings. It's
or
so,
faulty evidence.
yeah, yeah.
Even worse.
And you're rejecting any evidence that disagrees with you. Um, you just won't even consider it. I think an example of that, um, Greta Thunberg, the
Hmm.
young environmental activist, who in a previous episode I had good things to say about, but she's gone around the bend and is the example of cluster thinking, right?
Yeah.
And when her flotilla, her ship, with a, trying to break a blockade that's recognized as legal under international law. She was not kidnapped, as she said. Her ship was stopped. She was taken into custody. They were fed. Which she didn't like what they gave her, and they're being processed, and being sent home. Um, but before they did, they were all shown videos of the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel.
Hmm.
The raw footage, well, it was compiled footage from the terrorists who went in and committed horrible atrocities. They were shown this, and she turned her head and would not look at it because she could not accept evidence that was contrary to what she already had concluded. And that it's such a stark example of of people will do anything to avoid that feeling of cognitive dissonance.
Hmm.
They just will not accept. You it's you if you can't conceive of something, you can't even see it. And it
Yeah,
would
right.
right. And no matter what people think about the Israeli response to the horrific attack of October 7th. It was horrific. And and it happened, although there are people who deny it, it happened. It's documented. There's video evidence shot by the terrorists. But there are people who deny it. And she couldn't, wouldn't consider it, wouldn't look at it. Please tell me if I ever am at the point where I will not consider evidence and critically evaluate it because I've already made up my mind. Please tell me
Oh,
that,
I will.
yeah, because that's, um,
Well, I always
yeah,
say, I say practice cognitive dissidence.
yeah,
Question what you think,
yes.
right? That's what a dissident does, is they question
I,
the authority. They
I,
question the authority of your own thoughts.
one of the things I would tell students the first day of every class, in addition to read the fucking syllabus, maybe not precisely in those words, but I'd say question everything, including me. Ask me why, and I will tell you why I have am telling you this. I will have reasons for everything. If if you disagree or you question it, tell me so, but research it.
Right.
Find evidence,
Back it
find
up.
contrary, back it up. And I told them, I said, there's a textbook. I have disagreed with or questioned something on almost every page of almost every textbook I've ever read. And I've read a lot of fucking textbooks. Um, and then I also tell them how to read a textbook, which is not like reading a novel. You don't start at the beginning and just go through and you're done. It's,
Right.
it's not, it's, and
It's
for
a
a lot of them,
study
it was,
source. It's not a novel.
yeah, for a lot of them, that was the first time they ever heard how to read a textbook.
Oh,
Um, but I said, question everything. And I mean it. And why is this here? Why did you say that? Why does this book say that? Yeah. So please, if um I have reached conclusions based on evidence, but the scientific method says that you consider new evidence as it
right.
becomes available, and you consider your conclusions and you reevaluate and you refine your thinking accordingly.
Right.
Everybody should learn how to do that.
And you have to evaluate the evidence as
Yeah.
well as it
Yes.
comes in, right?
Yes.
But
Well, and even like this that we're talking about, we didn't just take what Lifton wrote. We looked at contrary
right.
things and we came to this other idea of what
Yeah,
this
and I'm
means.
and I'm not even criticizing Lifton
No.
particularly. I'm just saying this was an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah.
And And as I thought about it, I looked into it further and found critiques and differing viewpoints. And I'm not drawing any
Yeah. Yeah.
conclusions about it. It's just like, well, that's an explanation, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, and there was this, it reminded me of something that Hannah Arendt wrote. She coined the phrase the banality of evil
Yeah.
when
Yes.
talking
I'm
about
familiar with it.
the Adolf Eichmann, who was the architect, I won't use that word architect, the designer of, they
Hey, I
often
don't
use
like
it.
that word either.
Well, yeah. Well, my brilliant and accomplished wife, who is an architect, objects to the use of the word architect for things that are not architecture, because
Okay.
it's a term that you architects have to be licensed. Um, but
True.
um, but he was the evil mastermind behind it. But she described him as just a bureaucrat who was making no moral evaluation of what he was doing. He was just, the bureaucrat who was doing, and although that phrase, the banality of evil, has entered the cultural zeitgeist, there are people who object to it, and I have some objection to it because the and this goes to something Lifton said. Um, the it's a moral choice for which one is responsible, whatever the level of consciousness involved. So he may have thought he was just doing his job. I think
Eichmann, you mean?
yeah, he
Yes.
believed in what he was doing and was doing his job. And um, so, no, it doesn't matter. It's still evil. The moral choice was still evil. To use your powers, your abilities, your skills, whether they're bureaucratic or superpowers or whatever they are, for evil instead of for good is a choice. It's a moral choice.
Right, but again, the psychology that we're fighting here, and
Yeah.
in this case with all of the Nazi regime, was that they were
Thinking they were doing the right thing,
they
thinking
were
they were
yes,
doing
they were
something
taught that
good.
they were saving their race and therefore their country. They were nationalists
Yes.
in that, and believed that we are helping the country by removing things that slow our progress or hurt the national body or are
And by things,
imperfect.
by
It's
things, it was people.
yeah. Well, it's eugenics, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like here we are declaring, we are asserting that this is the model that is perfect and best. So anything that detracts from that or drags that down or is counter to that is evil because it hurts all of us
Well, and
as a nation.
it's Orwell in 1984 and Huxley in Brave New World, and they talked about how the state could reframe the truth. Uh, and and it's an example of that. I mean,
Well,
that's, you know,
and the manufactured immigrant crisis is exactly that.
yes.
It's
Yeah.
these people are hurting the public body. They are destroying our national identity. It is the absolute rhetoric of Nazism.
Yes. And you know who is to blame for this, as they call it, the great replacement theory,
Stephen Miller?
where the,
Tell me it's Stephen Miller.
well,
I hate that motherfucker.
I hate that motherfucker too. He's a Shonda. A Shonda means a shame. Um, the 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 great replacement theory is the idea that there's an attempt to replace the majority white
Oh,
European
yeah.
people of the United States with brown people or
Or-
non-Christian people,
right.
right? Non-Christian, non-white people. And you know who the right wing blames for that? The Jews.
Well, yeah, well, of course.
Yes, they are behind. They are the ones trying to replace white Christian people with all these other people. And so that's, man, we get it from both sides, I swear. You know, it's like that Tom Lehrer song. Tom Lehrer, a great um, uh, musician, comedian, wrote great songs, and he wrote a song for National Brotherhood Week, which was a thing. It was a thing once upon a time, National Brotherhood Week. When everybody's supposed to, in the spirit of
We're all
America,
the brothers, they love each other.
everybody's supposed to go along. And his song in honor of National Brotherhood Week was the Christians hate the Protestants, and the Catholics hate the Protestants, and the Protestants hate the Catholics, and the Hindus hate the Muslims, and everybody hates the Jews. So it's National Brotherhood Week, and and they
So
got
hate
a
the
big
Jews with all
laugh.
your brothers.
Hmm?
So hate the Jews with all your brothers.
Yeah, well, it got a big laugh in that song because it was, um, you know.
Yeah,
So anyway, I think God, there's so much going on, man. There's so many
yeah.
aspects to this. Um, um, phew.
Well, so let's wrap this all up in virtue, as is our
Yes,
wont, right?
yes,
So this sort of this this compartmentalization we talk about, right? Um, I think it requires a certain amount of humility to realize that you're compartmentalizing in your life, that everybody is in one way or another compartmentalizing. It's a survival tactic.
yeah.
And the more horrible your circumstance, the more the less porous your compartments have to be.
Well, and
So
ultimately, the multiple personality disorder, I forget what they call it now, is uh, the pathology of compartmentalization in response to trauma taken way too far.
yeah,
Um,
multiple personality disorder and schizophrenia. I've heard I saw somebody talking about conspiracy theories that if you are so deep in a conspiracy theory that you're convinced that anybody who doesn't think the way you do is in on the conspiracy is a sign of schizophrenia. It is
oh,
like textbook schizophrenia. It's
yeah.
like I'm the only one who knows what's really happening. Everyone else is in on it.
Yeah, and whereas you and I may be the only ones who know what's happening, everybody else is just uninformed because they haven't listened to us enough.
Right.
There we
So share
go. And like and
and
follow
like and
and
follow,
yeah,
right?
and
Spread our knowledge and our wisdom because only we can save the republic.
oh yeah. We can't do it alone though. It requires everybody. It really does.
Right.
Um,
And I don't even particularly want a leadership role. I'm
well,
right.
that's a
I'm
first. Yeah.
me. No, I'm the one you thought said was unambitious, and I agreed.
Yes, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yeah,
There's a
that's true.
lot of work to running a movement, and
Yeah,
now I've paid my dues.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, I didn't get clubbed down on a bridge or anything, but
No.
but,
Um,
but you know, there's still time.
well, yeah. And yes, so be prepared to stick a flower in the gun barrel and stand in front of a tank
With my
um
Walmart bags.
and lead the people over the barricade while exposing one breast.
Are you saying I have man boobs? What are you?
No, no, it's from The Miserables.
yes, the miserables.
The
Yeah. Well,
miserables. Yes.
who who is that figure that is that Liberty?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean Liberty, why only one? If you're really
Well,
Liberty, I mean
one of the early um, concept sketches for the Statue of Liberty was modeled on that.
oh, all
And
right.
the America, well, you know,
Yeah.
he's French.
I,
The
I'm
Americans,
surprised. I'm surprised at the time you could see her bare feet. I'm
yeah,
surprised I didn't object to that.
there's it's not often because the view of it is from below. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
tell unless you've seen overhead photos or you've been there. And I've been there actually a couple times. Around her foot, it's peeking out from her long robes. There's a chain
Yeah.
around her ankle and it's broken.
Yep. Yep. I'm
Um,
I'm aware.
when I was a kid, we went there, and the viewing in from the lantern she's holding was still open,
Oh,
and we got as high as the crown, and my sister didn't want to go any higher, and so
well, I understand it's
we all
basically
went.
like a twisty,
It
cramped
is, yeah,
ladder.
but she didn't want to go any higher, and we all went back down. It's like I want to go up. I want to see. So never did, but I've been to the crown a couple of times and seen it. Um, um,
Never been to New
Pretty
York.
cool. Oh, you should go.
I should. I really should.
Yeah, there's great stuff to see there. Really is. Yeah. So,
All right. So we
okay.
started by saying like, share, comment, send
Yeah.
us hate mail if that's all you got. Um,
Anything. Yeah.
yeah,
And
we're desperate for human interaction. Obviously, we keep coming back week after week to do
yeah.
this.
So, I think that's it. Be vigilant, stay safe, use your voice, speak out. One person can be silenced, but millions cannot be. Um, and
Don't comply in advance.
don't comply in advance. Listen to our two episodes about Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny, the 20 rules for resisting tyranny
Yep.
and recognizing and resisting, and don't comply in advance. And until we see you next time,
Out on the
be,
front lines,
yeah, be thou
a good night.
and true.